The story begins with a beautiful couple gathered to celebrate their wedding ceremony. They are Rick and Kate. The moment is not exactly as they wanted, because the following week Rick will be sent on a military mission. Nevertheless, they make the most of their days together, since they do not know what tomorrow may bring. Days later, we see a group of new American soldiers departing for a mission in the Middle East, in a region known for having endured countless wars over hundreds of years. Among them is Rick, and his partner Kate says goodbye to him. They love each other deeply, and the brief separation leaves them anxious. The recruits say farewell to their families, as the mission will last several weeks. However, in service to his country, Rick says he will be fine and return safely to Kate's arms. He then leaves to fulfill his duties as a soldier and receives the blessings of his father, Mr. Sebastian. In the next scene, we see the soldiers on a rocky battlefield somewhere in a remote area of the Middle East. It is night, and many die without ever seeing their enemies in the distance. Rick continues advancing across the terrain ahead, trying to identify who his adversaries are. Command orders them to proceed when the gunfire ceases. Soon afterward, they encounter a small group of terrorists who surrender upon realizing they are at a disadvantage. The captain asks where the others are, and one of them claims that only they remain. Suddenly, a soldier sees someone escaping into a cave, and not wanting anyone to get away, the commander orders Rick to inspect the opening in the hillside. Demonstrating courage, he follows the order, but deep in his thoughts, fear takes hold of his body. Rick enters the cave and, with the aid of a flashlight, follows the person he spots ahead. After passing through a narrow corridor, he enters a larger chamber, where he is surprised to find inscriptions in an unknown language on the wall. One of them catches his attention, an ancient creature drawn as an entity worshipped upon its throne. Suddenly, the person Rick was searching for appears in the darkness at the back of the cave. Startled, the soldier fires until the stranger falls. Believing he has eliminated the enemy, Rick approaches to inspect the body. However, upon getting closer, he discovers that he has killed a young man. He regrets what he has done, but suddenly the youth appears to still be alive and smiles in a macabre manner. Soon, his eyes turn red and begin to radiate heat. Then something strange happens. Suddenly, a living smoke-like form emerges from the young man's body and merges into Rick's body. The scene advances 2 weeks, and we see Kate worried about her husband, while her father-in-law is devastated, as his son was the only remaining member of his family still alive. He anxiously awaits the soldier's return. In this moment of apparent tranquility, Kate receives a phone call. The doctor who cares for the family says she will meet with them the following morning. The young doctor, Dana, arrives to report on Rick's condition. She explains that his comrades rescued him from inside a cave in a catatonic state, without full awareness. The soldier received medical care and afterward remained stable. Dana shows them a photograph of Rick's condition, and he appears fine. However, the doctor states that Rick developed post-traumatic stress disorder due to the incident during combat, although the real reason has not been discovered. Nevertheless, she reassures them by saying that the soldier will return home the next day. The hours become agonizing, and during the night Kate tries to calm herself by stepping outside for some fresh air. However, at that moment she finds Rick rocking on the porch swing. Happy, she embraces him, but quickly pulls away when she realizes he is cold and shows no affection toward her or his father. Fearing for her husband's health, Kate takes him, along with his father, to see Dr. Dana. After attempting a conversation, Dana tells Kate that Rick does not wish to speak at the moment. However, his condition still allows him to remain at home under observation, provided that a daily report is sent to her. Seeing the family's anguish, Dana recounts the tragic death of her father, a colonel who, after developing a similar psychological condition, took his own life. Rather than discouraging her, it inspired her to study and care for patients like Rick in hopes of making them whole again. We are then introduced to a group of Muslims performing their daily prayers at a mosque. The leader of the temple is named Ibrahim. After the prayers conclude, he is approached by Officer Tarling, who brings his delinquent son, the young Farid. He had been involved in a fight with other youths on the street, and the officer arrived before things became worse. When Tarling leaves, the young man explains that the other troublemakers insulted him, calling him a terrorist and blaspheming against his religion. That is why he acted in anger. His father preaches love and peace, so he asks his son to ignore such vile words. Farid rejects his father's way of thinking and walks away. Later, back at Kate's house, she waits for her husband to join her in bed. She wishes to relive the romantic moments she shared with Rick before he went to war, but the soldier shows no affection and simply goes to sleep. Near dawn, Kate is alone in bed. Suddenly, her blanket is pulled and a living smoke moves over her. Startled, Kate awakens, but sees nothing unusual except her husband inside the bathroom. When she tries to get up to see him, she cuts her foot on broken glass, and the pain brings her back to reality. After the nightmare, she gets up and sees Rick awake, staring at her strangely. A few minutes later, we see Rick cutting meat. He accidentally injures himself but shows no sign of pain. His father, seeing this, stops him before he cuts off his own hand. However, when he tries to help him, Rick slams him against the table, perhaps seeing him as an enemy. Kate hears the commotion, enters the kitchen, and pulls her husband away from Sebastian. The soldier then leaves for another room, leaving Kate terrified. Later, while speaking with Dr. Dana, they report Rick's sudden rage, but Dana explains that this is common and tends to return to normal over the course of several months. However, Dana introduces a new form of treatment, the use of masks created by the patient himself, something that demonstrates to those around him what he is feeling. Soon afterward, we see a group of patients where only Rick is without a mask, yet he is able to speak with the others. When asked what he would like to say, Dana listens as he describes how he felt in the war zone, where he feared every second that any local person could be an enemy and take his life. It consumed him from the inside. He was a soldier with only two choices: fear or hatred toward the people he fought against. The thought that he could not endure it always surfaced. During a patrol in a small Iraqi town, the soldier heard a woman screaming as she ran toward his comrade, and wearing a vest filled with grenades, she detonated herself, killing everyone nearby. On that day, Rick was the only survivor from his battalion, and it sparked hatred within his heart. Before that, he had surrendered only to fear, but his second option arrived with force. Rick states that he chose hatred. The speech is listened to carefully by everyone, and for a moment the soldier's trauma becomes understandable. Later, still at the Psychological Support Institute, Dana presents a special mask to Rick. She asks him to draw on it, alter it, or add something so that others can see what he feels inside. She then instructs him to use it as a way of expressing his emotions, fears, and anger. As soon as she leaves, he prepares an improvised fire, throws the white mask into the flames, and afterward his eyes turn red like those of someone possessed. Later, we see Rick at home with his wife. He begins behaving affectionately toward her, and the moment soon becomes loving, which makes Kate happy. However, when she turns to look at him, she finds Rick wearing the burned mask, his body altered as though something were controlling him. As soon as the moment is interrupted, Kate, still frightened, cannot stop her companion from leaving the house. At dawn, we see Ibrahim leading the prayer gathering of his Muslim congregation. Suddenly, Rick slowly enters the mosque and walks to the center of the room. Those who notice him look at him strangely and tell him to leave, recognizing him as a soldier who killed many of their people. Soon, most of them begin attacking Rick, but Ibrahim stops them, asking that no harm come to the man. The leader then takes Rick to his office and asks why he disrupted the prayer gathering. Rick begins speaking in Arabic, claiming that he will sanctify the place and then make it his refuge. Ibrahim approaches to confront the soldier over his insult toward the religion, but Rick removes the mask and reveals that his name is Fire Without Smoke. He points toward a place called Khair Khat, where he fought during his last mission, claiming that he became a new man there. Knowing the man must be suffering a psychotic episode, Ibrahim remains calm and leaves him there for a few moments. Half an hour later, Kate arrives at the location, as the police have been called to collect the disturbed soldier. Entering the mosque, Kate goes to the office and, out of respect, wears a scarf over her head. There, she finds Rick sitting in the corner of the room and explains to the authorities the mental problems her husband has been experiencing. Understanding the situation, Ibrahim makes no accusations that could lead to the man's arrest, and after they are released, Kate takes Rick to the car. She then thanks Ibrahim for his kindness. However, Ibrahim asks where the man learned ancient Aramaic. Kate is confused, as her husband is not multilingual. Concerned about Rick, Ibrahim asks Kate to keep a close eye on him because there are things science cannot explain or cure. After the couple leaves, Ibrahim returns to his office and senses that something is wrong. Looking at a vase of flowers, he notices that all of them have withered. Later, Kate researches the city Ibrahim mentioned and finds photographs of soldiers in combat, along with a terrifying video of a person behaving as though possessed. Suddenly, Sebastian is startled when he sees Rick wearing the mask, but the image disappears a moment later. Kate enters the room after hearing his brief scream. He says he is fine but claims he needs to take a walk. As soon as Sebastian leaves, Kate is startled by Rick's sudden appearance. Nevertheless, she tries to comfort him with a hug and encouraging words, but Rick presses her against the wall, lifting her off the ground. Fortunately, he soon releases her and walks away. The next morning, we see the family in Dana's office, and Rick is questioned about the events of the previous night. The man says nothing, so he is instructed to remain at the institute. Shortly afterward, Kate seeks guidance from Father Stephen, telling the man of God that her husband no longer seems like himself and that she is close to giving up. Stephen asks her to have faith in Rick's recovery and offers prayers on behalf of the couple. Knowing she will not find what she believes she needs there, Kate returns to Ibrahim's mosque and speaks with him privately. She talks about the ancient city of Kharkot, a region where approximately 15,000 soldiers died because of wars. It is reported that the area was occupied by the Soviets, who disregarded human rights and committed cruel crimes. However, years later, reports emerged of strange and supernatural apparitions, along with terrifying sounds in dark and isolated places. Ibrahim asks what she is implying, and Kate begins to suspect that something beyond post-traumatic stress has altered Rick's personality. She no longer believes in the priest's answers or medical guidance and does not know where to turn. Seeing Kate's desperation, Ibrahim accepts her phone number so they can continue the conversation later. Meanwhile, at the institute, Rick walks with another patient who has already shown improvement in his condition. They climb the stairs, but Joe wishes to photograph the lower floor, as photography is a hobby that helps with his recovery. However, this awakens Rick's war trauma and he suddenly attacks Joe. Fortunately, the man dodges him but ends up pinned against the wall and is horrified to see Rick's demonic eyes. Panicked, Joe runs down the stairs. Suddenly, the lights go out, and because of that he falls. Seeing Rick approaching, Joe photographs him, but the man keeps advancing and grabs him in anger. With strength beyond that of an ordinary man, Rick lifts Joe into the air. At Ibrahim's house, he tells his wife Rasha that Kate came to ask for help, something Farid cannot accept because they are not part of their people. When Rasha questions him, Ibrahim explains that Kate believes her husband may be possessed by something their people might understand. Rasha dismisses the idea, considering Kate's people superstitious and attached to false beliefs. However, Ibrahim explains that he observed something strange in Rick and saw darkness in the soldier's eyes. After hearing Kate's concerns, Rasha states that her people never cared about them and that, to her, Ibrahim's actions are an insult to their family. During a session where patients gather to draw what is happening in their minds, Rick behaves strangely, and not only him, Joe, who is still alive and had been improving, begins acting like Rick. The following morning, Kate brings Rick to a garden to speak with Ibrahim. At first, the man behaves civilly, but soon his voice changes and he begins recounting details from Ibrahim's past. The Muslim leader becomes confused and frightened by truths Rick knows despite never having met him. Rick grows aggressive and orders Ibrahim to leave him alone, otherwise he will destroy not only his sanctuary, but also his family. Knowing the man is possessed by something ancient and evil, Kate begs the entity to release Rick. However, the evil presence claims that the soldier Rick no longer exists, and that the body no longer belongs to her. Without being able to do anything at that moment, Kate and Ibrahim watch the entity walk away, and wherever it passes, flowers are consumed by fire. Ibrahim then tells Kate that Rick is under the control of a very ancient entity known as a jinn, a malicious demonic spirit from Arabic belief that feeds on fear, trauma, and hatred, growing stronger with every soul it consumes. Ibrahim asks for time to prepare and attempt a spiritual exorcism. The next day, inside the institute, a nurse calls Dana to Rick's room. There, she sees him standing while the other soldiers traumatized by war writhe on the floor. Rick tells the doctor that the group now belongs to him and that they will all become part of his flock. She prevents the security guard from acting aggressively and then asks Rick to help those who need assistance. Unexpectedly, the soldier gestures for the group to stand and go where Dana instructed. Later, Dana reviews the patient's examinations, but nothing unusual is found in their brains, nor any clue explaining the strange behavior. Meanwhile, Ibrahim studies the entity and discovers that its deeds and appearances occurred in places marked by violence and death. Suddenly, the books on the shelf behind him begin moving unexpectedly. He tries to steady the furniture, but the phenomenon stops. Curious, Ibrahim asks the janitor Jacob for help and discovers behind the shelf the same painting of the entity Rick saw in the caves. Ibrahim says he will get a cleaning product to remove it. However, while in the hallway, he hears a strange scream, and when he returns to the office, he sees his desk in flames and Jacob standing motionless, with black eyes radiating heat unnaturally. Soon, the man returns to normal without understanding what happened. Minutes later, Ibrahim speaks with one of the Muslim counselors, who advises him that if he manages to expel the entity from Rick, he must imprison it inside an object and then burn it. As soon as the man leaves, Ibrahim sees his son standing in the shadows. When asked what he is doing there, Farid appears possessed and once again threatens the man of God, demanding that he not interfere with its plans. Ibrahim asks what the entity wants among humans, and using Farid because of the fear, anger, and dark emotions stored within the young man, the creature says it seeks war and revenge against those who destroyed its city more than 2,000 years ago. It also warns that if Ibrahim interferes, it will return and destroy the boy. Back at the Psychological Institute, Dana goes to check on Rick. Entering his room, she sees furniture stacked atop one another as though floating. Suddenly, Rick appears beside her and forcefully pushes her out, wanting to be alone. She then goes to Joe's room but cannot find him. Looking under the bed, she sees the same symbol of the entity drawn on the floor. Suddenly, Joe startles her and shoves the bed aside. He appears holding the security guard's gun, whom he killed minutes earlier, and quickly pins Dana against the wall. The doctor tries to convince the soldier that he is a good man. Joe removes the mask and appears to regain his sanity. However, suddenly, he takes his own life. At Ibrahim's house, he leaves his son tied to the bed, knowing the young man has been marked for use by evil. Even so, he asks his wife to watch over him because he must act. He then calls Kate and asks her to meet him at the Psychological Institute. When they arrive, they find Dana overseeing the crime scene investigation. Kate asks her to bring Rick to them so an exorcism can be performed. Dana does not object because, having Joe's camera in her possession, she saw the photograph taken of Rick when he attacked the soldier. Believing Kate, Dana prepares a dose of tranquilizer, and then they all head to the place where Rick was last seen. There, chairs and tables float in a terrifying manner, defying gravity. Surrounded by partial darkness, they are surprised by Rick, who approaches Kate to frighten her. Fortunately, Dana acts quickly and injects him with the tranquilizer, rendering the soldier unconscious. Having only 2 hours to do what must be done, Ibrahim instructs them to take him to the mosque. Once there, he tells his congregation not to enter if they hear anything terrifying, but only to pray for them. While Ibrahim prepares Rick's mask to serve as the vessel, the soldier awakens and, though drowsy, manages to command his followers to come to him. While Ibrahim chants in Arabic, Dana leaves to obtain another tranquilizer dose. Suddenly, a van carrying the soldiers under the creature's influence arrives at the location. They rush out furiously and engage Ibrahim's men in combat. Inside the mosque, Ibrahim manages to complete the chant, but Rick rises and stands before him. Faced with the ritual, the creature does nothing to the man, but it still remains inside the soldier's body. Kate asks why the exorcism did not work, and Ibrahim explains that he must perform the chant 3 times. They go after the possessed man, and shortly afterward Dana enters the mosque. She sees the walls covered in symbols written in an archaic Arabic language. Suddenly, Rick appears behind her and slams her against the wall. He mocks the doctor's therapy and insults her. Fortunately, Ibrahim arrives in time and knocks him unconscious with a fire extinguisher. He then resumes the prayers inside the sacred hall. As the chant continues, the inscriptions that were previously invisible begin appearing on the walls of the mosque, and the battle outside becomes increasingly difficult to control. A Molotov cocktail is thrown into the building, distracting Ibrahim. Immediately, the entity rises powerfully and knocks Dana and Sebastian aside. Outside, 2 police cars arrive, but even then the soldiers under the entity's control overpower the officers. Rick turns toward Ibrahim and grabs his throat, attempting to stop him from completing the chant. However, Kate gets up and begins using the self-defense techniques Rick himself taught her, though it is not enough. The possessed man soon approaches Ibrahim, breaks his hand, and throws him to the ground. At that moment, Kate demonstrates her willingness to surrender completely to the entity, claiming she promised her husband she would be with him wherever he was. She then asks the jinn to take her as well. This distraction allows Ibrahim to finish the chant, and with the spirit being directed into the mask, Kate removes it and, following Ibrahim's instructions, throws the object into the fire. With the ritual complete, the malignant smoke that consumed the soldier Rick leaves his body and becomes trapped inside the burning mask. As a result, all of the creature's puppets return to sanity. We then see everyone reunited with their families, healthy and free from any disturbance. Unfortunately, this evil cannot be destroyed by a simple exorcism. The film concludes by presenting the final outcome of the story. Later, when Dana takes a bath to relax after everything she has endured, something begins pulling her downward into the bathtub for the final dive of her life.